We're live. Oh my goodness. I do not do very many lives on this channel. I do them all the time over on my other channel, but this is a real exciting extra Saturday thing for us. I'm so excited that you're here. I was excited to see there are already comments going on. How are you guys doing? Are you guys ready to plan? Whew. 2021. This is going to be so much fun. I love the fresh energy and excitement that comes with thinking toward a new year, planning for a new year. And if you are new to this channel, or new to this process, like you've just joined the Heart Breathings channel this past year, which I know is a lot of you. I have done this for the past couple of years, but this year I actually figured out a way to share my iPad screen with you. So this is going to be kind of fun. You'll see it here on the screen and I'll make it bigger in a minute, but that's going to make this whole process a little bit better than it has been in years past. But what we're going to do today is we are going to basically look through all your obligations, everything you want to get done next year. Now, this is not obviously sitting down and planning every detail of your promotions and what you're going to do on Instagram and all of that stuff. Some people do like to plan those types of details for the whole year. I find that it is so much more effective for me personally to plan those types of details and goals 90 days at a time. And why I like 90-day planning is I like to be able to have that fresh start every quarter. And then at the end of the quarter and really at the end of each month to look at what all I've been doing and say, is this working? So if I set a goal of increasing my YouTube followers by 2,000 subscribers this quarter, then I can actually reevaluate at the end of the quarter and say, did all of those things that I put on my list actually move me toward that goal? Did I get 2,000 subscribers or did I get way more or way less? And then I can rework my plan for next quarter. When you plan a whole year in advance, you really can end up doing a lot of stuff that is not moving the needle. So that is, if you guys can let her know. So if you don't see the live stream, you just need to refresh. So if somebody can pop that in the comments there for Patricia, that would be great. So when you plan for, your entire year in advance, really what I recommend that you do is you just plan an overview of the year. You're not planning all the tiny little details, all your tiny little goals for the year. But because we're authors, most of us, and some of you may be using this for just your general life, even if you're not an author, that you can really get to use this. But what we're going to do today is look at that overview, because when you're an author, you can't really only plan 90 days at a time. If you are familiar with the business and you've been at this for a while, you have to be looking ahead, because there's cover art to book, there's, editors to book, there's promotions to book. So you do have to be looking ahead a little while for all the other things that have to get set up. Plus, what you do in Q1 is going to affect what you do in Q2. And if you want to have a book ready to publish by Q3, maybe you need to spend some time in Q2 getting your cover art ready and your promotions and everything else. So that is why we are going to also look, even though you hear me talk a lot about 90-day planning and the value of 90-day planning, this is why we're also going to plan an overview of 2021. Now, I am freaking out right now because we have 450 people watching, which makes me so very excited. If you could do me a favor and hit that like button so that YouTube will show this to even more people and even more of my subscribers, I would certainly appreciate it. I'm so glad you guys are here. Now, you do not need this workbook to plan this out and follow this system today. You can just grab any calendar that you have, any planner. You can just pull up Google Calendar online and you can do that. You don't have to have this, but this is a cool tool if you want to use it. And I'm going to kind of walk you through it a little bit today, but I'm also going to give you some tips that you won't find inside the workbook. So it's going to be super fun. Oh, Kim says, loving the baby Yoda. Yes, I love him. He is new to my house and I am very happy that he is here. So anyway, you guys, I am so excited for this. This is going to be really fun. And I have some great tips and tricks for you here today. So let's get started. I made a few notes to make sure that I absolutely follow everything I want to talk about, because I tend to get pretty excited on live streams. And this is by far the most people I think I've ever had on a live stream. So I'm smiling from ear to ear. So glad you're here. All right. So a little bit about my story, especially for those of you who are new. I am an author and I've been self-publishing my books since 2010. And I never really had a grip on my planning. And if you have any experience in the author world, you know that when you self-publish, it's not just like you're writing books and publishing them. You are actually becoming an entrepreneur. You have to promote your work. You have to have content creation for your social media. You have to be a cover, someone that directs your cover designer, or some people do their own cover design. So there's a lot more that goes into the process of publishing a book. And that's true if you're here and you're a blogger or you're a realtor or a teacher. There's more than just what seems on the surface level goes into your job. So what happened with me is I jumped in ready to write. And as I started publishing, and actually as I got successful, oh my gosh, I started to realize there was all this other stuff that was taking away from my writing. Plus, there was the mental side of publishing and comparing myself to other people, feeling like it was never good enough, feeling like I was never writing fast enough. And all of that kept me from realizing my full potential. What I used to do, and I've told this story before, so definitely hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you have heard this story and if it resonates with you, that what I used to do was I used to be a chronic planner. And what I would do is I would go into Google Calendar and I would remove all the holidays and events. So it was just a blank calendar. And I would print it out for the whole year. I would print every single month on its own piece of paper. And I would go through with a bunch, like a whole stack of highlighters like this, and I would color code every book I was hoping to write. And I would go through and I would make a plan. Okay, I'm going to write this book from this day to this day. And this is kind of what we're going to do today, but I'll show you how it's going to be a little bit different. But I would go through and I would plan, I'm going to write this book before January 31st, then I'm going to edit it in 10 days and I'm going to send it to my editor, and I would make this whole plan. But while I was planning, there was a huge flaw in the direction that I was taking, because instead of being realistic, what I was doing is I was putting on these rose-colored glasses with the excitement of the new year. And I was saying, this year, I am going to be the best I've ever been. This year, I'm going to write every day. This year, I'm going to, instead of writing 1,000 words a day, I'm going to write 3,000 words a day. This year, I am going to be super Sarah. I'm not going to have any sick days. I'm going to crush these goals, and I'm going to, publish more books than I've ever published before. And I'm going to edit these books, and I'm not going to have any issues, because I'm going to make this year the best year of all time. And that is an exciting way to plan. But if, like I see some people saying, yes, that sounds like me. So if that was you, yes, this year I'll be a whole new person. Thank you, Danica. That's exactly the way I was feeling. This year I'll be a whole new person. And then inevitably what would happen come January 15th, January 30th, sometimes January 10th, I would realize, oh my gosh, I'm so far off what I hoped to do, because I got a late start. I had a headache. I didn't finish this book. Like I would always say, I'm going to finish this book before January 1st so that I can start a new project at the beginning of the year. And then just like happened to me, if you watch my NaNoWriMo diaries, I didn't finish that project, so everything else got pushed back. So then what would I do? Instead of making a plan or just kind of rolling with it and doing my best from that point, what would I do? I would go back to Google Calendar, reprint the rest of the year remaining, and I would replan in exactly the same way. And I would spend 2 or 3 days sitting there replanning my goals, replanning what I was going to write, and trying to be the very best that I could possibly be. But this time, because I was behind, guess what I would do? Some of you know this because you intimately know, because you've done the same thing. I know I'm not the only one. I would say, because I'm behind, now instead of writing 2,000 words a day, I need to write 5,000 words a day to finish this book on time. So instead of coming back from it and thinking, okay, I'm going to be really kind to myself, I'm going to think about my mental health, I'm going to create a schedule that builds positive momentum, I always 100% of the time came at my schedule with an attitude of fear. And that fear propelled me and caused me to continue to create plans that I absolutely could not stick to. And then what did that do? It put me on a negative spiral of never meeting my goals, never living up to what I felt was my potential, never hitting those big deadlines. And it was frankly devastating to me. And I know we laugh about it and I see people saying, that's me, that's what I'm doing. But it is really a challenging way to live, because even though there are some ways that that type of expecting the best of yourself pushes you forward, and it does in moments of inspiration cause us to get more done, for the most part, it leads to burnout, disappointment in ourselves, negative self-talk, like the things I used to say about myself in my head, about how terrible I was, what was wrong with me, why couldn't I stick to a schedule like everybody else? And I felt, it made me feel very alone and separated. And I don't like feeling that way at all. And so what I did was basically I hit a really rough rock bottom about 4 years ago, and I couldn't write for months. I was really, really in a dark place. And I knew at this point I had a choice. I could either change, try again to say, I'm going to change myself and I'm going to be the best I've ever been and I'm going to do it this time, which is, like everybody's saying in the comments, insanity, because you're trying to do the same thing over and over again, but not changing it. You're just, you're getting the same results and you're never changing. You're expecting something different. Or I can create a new way of planning. I can create a new way of looking at this and try to be realistic instead. And it is so easy when we look at other people online and we see how much they're producing, how many books they're publishing in a year, how many words they're writing. And it's so easy to compare ourselves to that and say, well, I am obviously flawed. I suck. I'm never going to be good enough. And then all that does is make it harder for us to be creative, make it harder for us to really enjoy what we're doing. And why are we even doing this if we're not going to have fun and enjoy it and go after our dreams? And I don't want to hold myself back like that. And as you saw probably in the NaNoWriMo diaries, sometimes I do falter and I still expect too much out of myself, but it's always a process of trying to get better. So what I'm going to show you today and talk about today is a process of planning your writing schedule for 2021 that is not about hustle and getting it all done and being your very best self and writing more than you've ever written before, even though you might actually write more than you ever have before. Once you take those chains and that burden of having to be like super you, might be surprised at how much your creativity actually becomes a part of your daily life rather than something that you're trying to like dig out from a grave. But try your best as you look at this 2021 writing plan to come at it with realistic eyes. As my husband, George, says to me all the time, it's not, just because you put it on a paper with a highlighter and you say, I'm going to be my very best person of all time, and I'm going to write double what I usually do, and I'm going to push myself and hustle harder, does not mean you're actually going to do it. You're not going to magically create more time or magically be able to write twice as fast. But when you plan realistically and you actually take your life, your mental health, your chronic illness, your true schedule into account, and you let yourself kind of breathe a little bit, you can plan a writing schedule that creates more creativity and is more realistic. And what he always tells me is the worst thing that could happen is you get ahead. And that feeling of getting ahead is something I never have known my whole life, because I live in a constant state of feeling like I'm behind. So we are going to be on this journey together, because like I said, it's never something where, like, even now, after years of using this type of system for myself, I'm not perfect, because sometimes even when you do plan realistic, as happened to me just this past NaNoWriMo, sometimes the story doesn't want to come together as fast as it does. So sometimes you're going to have to just give yourself grace. But sometimes it is actually going to go faster than you expect. Alexis, what is getting ahead? What is this mysterious thing none of us have ever known? Yeah, so that is really, really crazy. So I know, oh my gosh, over 600, we have 600 people here live. Oh my gosh, you guys, my whole cheeks are going to hurt from smiling. I feel like I'm a little bit warm here. Oh, my thing is about to die on me. I'm talking too much. Let me make sure I can bring that back up. Okay, so if you have your 2021 writing plan downloaded, you can go ahead and start referencing that now. If you don't have it, you can get it for free over on my website. There is hopefully a link for you down below. If not, you can go to heartbreathings.com/blog. And the very first post there about how to set goals you'll stick to, if you scroll down to the bottom and sign up on that form, it will send it to you. But like I said, you don't have to have that. You just need a calendar. So we're going back to that idea of having a calendar that you're going to reference, but we're going to do things a little bit differently. So, number one tip that I have for you out of that story of my life is don't start from fear. Do your best right now to just say, I'm not going to plan because I'm afraid of not hitting enough sales, of not making enough money, of not getting this book published when I said I was going to. Those are valid fears, but just let them go. Just let them go and say, while I'm making this plan, I'm going to do my best to make a plan I can be proud of and that I can stick to. Number two is don't start this process before you've followed these steps with already knowing exactly how many books you want to write. This is another problem, right? That we often will say, well, I know I'm going to write these 12 books. And you haven't even looked at whether 12 books is actually feasible or possible. You just say randomly, I'm going to publish these 12 books this year if it kills me. So don't start with how many books you're going to write. Start with an idea of what you're going to write. So, if you know you're writing 3 series, you can have a list if you want of the types of books you want to write, but don't set in your head, I'm going to squeeze 12 books into my schedule this year. We got to give ourselves the freedom to actually see if you have time for 12 books. So that's my second big tip for you. All right. So in our plan here, the first thing I have in this one, I'm going to make this part a little bit bigger, is just a little note from me that kind of talks about that stuff that I just told you about. But here is where the plan really begins. Your 2021 calendar. So basically, here's the steps that I follow. If you are an alumni of my HB90 system or you've used my HB90 planner, you have seen a similar process to this already. If you haven't, then let's walk through it. So first thing that you need to do is go through your entire calendar and mark off any days that you already know you won't be working on your books. So that means your birthday. It means your anniversary if you know you're not going to write on your anniversary. It means if you've got a big conference planned for next year. I am going to talk about how this year might be we might still be going into some lockdown. So I'll give you some tips for that. But what we need to do first is basically go to the calendar of the year. So in my little planner here, it starts on page 10, and there are 3 months on each page, which follows kind of the quarterly system. And the first step I always do, and like I said, you can do this on any planner or any like Google Calendar or anything like that. The first thing I always do is I go through and I just mark off any days that I know I'm absolutely not going to be writing. My birthday, January 23rd, I'm probably not going to write that whole weekend. So I will mark that off. And that's the first step of the process, is to go through and mark off the days. And those are the things that you already know are events. Your son's birthday, your boyfriend's birthday, your exams at school. You've got a big work project that happens every March, so you're not going to be able to write these 2 weeks. Whatever it is, go through and mark it off. Alexa says, I am writing in pencil, which is probably a pretty good idea unless you have an iPad or something like me. If you have an iPad, you can pull the PDF up in something like GoodNotes and you can just write on it. Delivery, my doorbell just rang, maybe some Christmas presents arriving. So that is the first step, to go through the entire year and mark off anything you know. For this upcoming year, it is quite possible that there is also going to be things that you want to do, like calendars or, birthday, or not birthdays, but conferences, things that you're hoping you're going to be able to do, but we really don't know. Obviously, we have vaccine happening here, so hopefully we're going to be through a lot of this COVID lockdown very soon, but things are still up in the air and we have to take that into consideration. If only we had known when we first started planning 2020 what it was going to be like. But at least for 2021, we're armed with the information that we're, going to be potentially in lockdown. So Robin says London is going into serious lockdown. I'm fairly certain there's more and more lockdowns coming here in the US. So we just have to be ready for that. And so what I would recommend you do is, if, let's say, you signed up for a conference that's not supposed to happen until August and you're already signed up and you think it's going to happen, go ahead and mark those days off on your calendar, because chances are, if you don't get to go because things are still locked down, there's probably still going to be some kind of virtual event, or worst case scenario, like I said, you get ahead because you have extra days that open up on your calendar. But for now, everything you have a date for, and I know there are some of you that still write at conferences. I have friends that still would get up at 6 a.m. to write at a conference or on vacation or on their birthday. I am not that person. If I've got a big event coming up, I just won't be writing. So just know yourself. And if you don't know yourself, then plan extra days off. Just plan for those extra days. Happy birthday, Michelle. So yeah, go ahead and plan those. Mark them off on your calendar. Then you might have some events that you don't know when they're happening, but you want to make time for it. So let's say you have a group of girlfriends and you always go to a spa day. I mean, who among us has this luxury life? But just for example, you have a spa day with your girlfriends and it's going to be once a quarter, but you don't know exactly what day it is. It really does not matter where you put it on your schedule, as long as you put it around the time of year that you think it's going to be. So let's say, it's a anniversary weekend away, or not anniversary weekend, but let's say it's like a weekend away with your husband for Valentine's, and you don't know when that's going to happen because you don't know if you'll get to do it right on Valentine's weekend, but it should be around there. You could really just mark it off anywhere. You could mark it on the weekend of Valentine's, or if you wanted to, you could take it and you could mark it, down here at the end of February. It doesn't matter, because really what we're looking for is an accurate representation of how many days. And if your schedule has to get fudged a little bit, you can do that in your quarterly plan. But you need to make sure that you've accounted for as many things as possible. I'm not going to give you a ton of time to sit and do this, but you can definitely do this afterwards. But if you can, go ahead and start marking things off if you want to plan with us right here, right now. But once you're done with that part of the plan, oh, hey, Hildy, I'm so glad you're here. Once you're done with that part of the plan, go back to this idea of your 2021 calendar. And I want you to count up all the days you're taking off. So this could also be something where you know you're never going to write on Saturday and Sundays. Like if you just don't write on the weekends, mark all the weekends off. If you don't write on Mondays because you always work late on Mondays, mark those days off. If you have, let's say you're a nurse or something and you work long, like 12-hour shifts, but it switches from week to week, it doesn't matter which days of the week you mark off, but if you know you always have 4 days a week that you're working those 12-hour shifts, just mark Monday through Thursday off. And it's okay if the days on the planner the calendar don't exactly match up to what your reality will be, because it will still give you the right number of days, if that makes sense. If you have a question about that, just let me know. So Planner Nerd Plan says, I mark off family days, which is Sundays for me. So that's really a good idea. If you know that there's going to be some days that you need off, every Sunday, every other Sunday, go ahead and mark those off, right? If you have an alternating schedule, so you don't know exactly which days, just do your best guess to say, okay, it's 4 days a week that I'm not going to be writing, and do that. So Zara asked a question about calculating time for outlining. So I am going to talk about that in just a minute. After you have all of those days, go through and actually count. I'm not going to do this right now for the sake of time, but once you count, we have 365 days in the year next year. So mark off the number of days so far just from that one exercise. That is just the dates or the days that you're not going to be writing, like birthdays, events, holidays, weekends. So let's say you get down to it. This is potentially going to be a very eye-opening experience for some of you, because when we think about how many books we're going to write in the year, we think we have a whole year. And when you take off the weekends and the holidays and the events that you've got, you might find that you only have, 160 days left to write. And that suddenly can make you understand in an instant, with a light bulb moment, that you have always been over planning and overestimating, because you can't possibly write that many books in 100. You don't actually have 365 days or a whole year. You only have 160. So this is potentially a very sobering experience. So Claire has 353 days left. So she maybe plans to write every single day and only has a few events throughout the year. Some of you, though, might have only 100 days, and that's okay. You can't compare yourself to anyone else, and you can't create more days. It is what it is, right? It's just going to be what it is. So it's better to face reality as it is rather than try to live in a fairy tale land, as much as we would love to. So I'm actually going to erase that because that looks so thick, and I'm going to make it a little bit nicer, hopefully. So let's say we did this and we had 160 days left. Oh, no, I did that wrong. Well, we'll say we marked off 160 days. So when we subtract that from the first number, we end up with 205 days remaining. So this is your first number from step one, 205. So I'm seeing some good numbers. So some people are actually going through it fast. So that's awesome. 296 for Hildy. Shay has 201, 284 for Allie, and hovering around 300 for Melissa. Now, step two. And this is the step that a lot of people skip. You have your vacations, your obligations marked off. Now I want you to think back on this past year and what your reality has been, considering, this year has been extra challenging. So it might have been a difficult year for creativity, but we're moving forward. I do see a quick question. Jenna said, how do you plan, for big events like moving when you don't know how many days you'll need to pack or unpack and account for delays? I'll also be moving next year, so this is kind of tricky. You have to just kind of give it your best guess and say, okay, I'm going to give myself this month. And if you mark it off for the month of August and it ends up happening in September, it doesn't really matter for your yearly schedule. Like I said, you can work those details out and adjust it in the quarterly plan, but just give it your best guess. I am going to give myself probably 3 full weeks, around like 1 week before the week of the move and then 1 week after, because I still need to be writing even after, but I feel like that gives me a good amount. Also, I am going to give some tips once we're done with this little section about what happens if your circumstances change. So I saw Robin say, I may get a full-time job. Some people also may, you may be moving. You may also be on furlough and you don't know when you're going back to work. You may be a teacher working from home, but you might be going back to school. So I'll give you some tips on that. So just hang on for just a minute. Step 2, though, is thinking back on 2020. How many unexpected days did you need to take off each month from things like illness, chronic migraines, just not feeling good, other things like this? Because so often we forget to factor this into our schedule. And this is a big part of the HB90 system that you guys hear me talking about here a lot, the 90-day system, but it's good to do this for the whole year when you're planning as well. I know for me, I don't know that I've really heard people call it a chronic illness, but really it is. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. It is, I have a pretty severe case of it, but it's not like it affects my writing on a daily basis, but probably 3 days a month has at least days when I don't feel like writing because I have terrible headaches or I'm in pain or there's too much, fatigue or other things. Then probably once or twice a year, I have a major flare up that will last me a week or more. So for me, when I'm planning the days I have to pull out of my schedule to account for those days and give myself that free space to have pain and have, an illness that I have, means for me that I have to pull 12 months times 3 days. So that's 36. And y'all, I'm not good at math, so please feel free to correct me in the comments. But for me, that's 36. That's 36 days automatically off. And then, like I said, probably another twice a year where I have another like 7 to 14 days. So I'm just going to go ahead and say 14, and I'm going to take off an extra 50 days out of the year for sick days, headaches, anything like that. So Allie says, any kind of chronic illness, even mild, can take its toll on your mental health. And then flares leave you feeling demoralized and exhausted. Yes, exactly. So if you have something, it is not, even if it's not a physical thing, but you just know your mood swings and you always have something going on. Think back to this past year. Rana, I'm so sorry to hear this. 4 migraines this month. I mean, it can be really difficult. But when we ignore that part of our lives, that true reality, and we try to stick our head in the sand and compare ourselves to people who don't have chronic illness or don't have challenges or elderly parents they're taking care of or whatever it is, then we're really just setting ourselves up for failure because, and I shouldn't use the word failure, but for disappointment and for negative, spirals that we get into. It's so much better to give yourself that extra time. And you know what? If it just so happens that I don't need those 50 days off, guess what? I can get ahead, or I can make the book even better, or I can spend a little bit of extra time on, time with my kids or going to the beach. So it's better, in my opinion, to plan, like overestimate the time you need off. This is, I know, a difficult step for a lot of people because you can do all of this. And then when you get down here and you say, okay, I've got 50 days that are going to get knocked off. I'm scared of that. So it's like total number of days off is 50. Then on the next page here, take the number from step 1. So remember I had a 205 and then minus the number of days from step 2. And if I were really looking at this, I'm like, wait, what is that? Y'all, I'm a writer. I'm not a mathematician. No offense to writers who are mathematicians, but That's 155 days left. So if this was really my reality, I've just gone from 365 days to write and get everything done for my writing career to 155. And that can take a moment of mourning, to be honest. Some of you may be like, oh, great, this is amazing. I have 350 days still to write next year and it's going to be great. But I warn you, if you are here and you are following this plan and you are saying, I am never meeting my goals, I'm always behind, then be careful if you find yourself with a really high number, because you might still have a blind spot there where you're not being realistic about how many days you need off throughout the month. So try your best to really look at the number. And yes, okay, so I see that gives me anxiety, Emmy. I know it does. It gives me anxiety every single time. And a lot of you I know right now are starting to feel, holy crap, I have all these goals. I have all this thing I want to accomplish, and I've got 100 days left to make this happen. But here's the way I want you to look at it. If you hadn't done this process, it's not like you would suddenly have more time. If you hadn't seen the reality of it, it's not like you would have just magically had twice as many days. This is your reality. So think of how much more powerful you are right now, understanding that, because think of how many days, because you don't understand really the reality of how much time you have or how little time you have, you would potentially go and say, I don't feel like, I don't feel like writing today. I think I'm going to watch this TV show. But when you only have 155 days to get all your books done this year, you might be a little bit more motivated to say, you know what, I don't have a day to lose. When I'm feeling well, I need to make the most of it. And that has made such a huge change for me. It's hard to face the reality. So mourn it, feel the sadness, and then let's create a plan that's going to work for you and have those 155 days or whatever the number is for you be the most powerful days they possibly can. So Tam says, Sarah, are you intending these calculations to be just writing, like first draft, or the entire writing process? So the way I like to do it is just exactly like I've done it, where it's like basically working days. So I mark off days that I know I'm not going to be working at all. And I probably should have said this ahead. So if it makes a difference for you, go ahead and change it or alter it a little bit. But the way I look at it is I say, these are my working days for the year. And that includes all of my writing. Now on my birthday, I might actually be doing some like a video or some other type stuff, but I'm looking just at my writing tasks. So for me, this is my plotting, my writing, my drafting, my editing, my publishing. So this is all my writing type stuff. If you are not a writer and you're here still to plan other things, then you can, like I think Momo Keen said she was working on some of her graphic design type stuff or her art. These are your working days. So really look at it as your working days. So, oh, Janet, I saw molasses and forget-me-nots. I didn't see your name go by, but hello, Janet. So yeah, that's the way I plan it. And of course, any type of planning system you see from me is 100% flexible. You will be able to turn it and make it your own. So if you just want to use this for drafting days because you have no problem with the editing phase, then you can just use it for drafting days, but alter it to meet your own needs. I personally use it for all of my like writing work days, and that includes the entire process of it. So then what we're going to do next is, and actually I will just quickly mention this, that in my HB90 planner and the boot camp, we do this similar type of process just for the quarter and just for all of your work, not just your writing, but for everything. And what I do allow people to add in, so if you want to do this for yourself, is if you have any events planned next year that are like writing retreats where you get lots extra done, like for anybody who's in my Word Sprints group, we have a Heart Breathing's Word Sprint group, and I saw Little Forest Tomes is here. Lisa runs a lot of our live writing sprints and things. We have a writing retreat in our group every single month. So if during those retreats or double down days that we do in that group, or if you're a part of some other writing group or during NaNoWriMo, you usually write double. You can adjust your day count or your plan once we get to the actual scheduling to account for times when you're actually going to write a little bit more than your average. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but I just wanted to mention it because sometimes there will be that time where you're like, actually, I get twice as much done every nano. Yay, sprints group. Woohoo. Alexis says those writing sprints and retreats are the best. If you guys are not in our writing sprints group, you are welcome to join. It is free for everybody to join, and we do fun writing retreats and things. I believe there is always a link down in the description box, but I think it's just facebook.com/groups/HB writing sprints. If anybody has a link, go ahead and pop it in, but I'm pretty sure it's in the description box for you guys. And if you can't find us, then just feel free to reach out to me in the comments or in email, because it is a fun group. Yes, Little Forest Homes. That is Lisa. She's awesome. We have several really good admins that do some writing sprints there. Literally almost every day we have live writing sprints that are really fun. Okay, step 3 in the process. So Emma says, first of all, I've never attended one of the writing retreats. I assumed it would be more US time based. So during the writing retreats, they are a little bit more US time based. I will put up a post the night before to accommodate anybody who's like in Australia or across the world. And the lives will start first thing in the morning. So if you're like in England, they'll start for you in the afternoon. So then they go throughout the day. So it is a little bit more US based, but if we have anybody ever who is overseas that wants to run some live writing sprints at a time that works for you, I'm sure there would be lots of people that would appreciate it. So we are open to more people joining in. Plus, if you can't make the lives, they're still on replay, so you can watch them after and still get the inspiration from it there. So definitely come join us. Our next one is actually coming up next weekend. So come join. All right. Step number 3 in the process. In this step, this is probably the most challenging step and the step that's the hardest because we're all going to be different. But in this step, you're going to be estimating how many working days it's going to take you to complete each part of the writing process. So this is kind of tough, and I had to make a few notes about this. So one of the best things I think is to kind of start, before you start planning it and putting it out on a calendar, go ahead and start thinking, how long does it take you to write 1,000 words? If you have a general idea of how long it takes you, either how long it takes you to write 1,000 words on average in drafting, or how much is your average words per writing sprint? So for those of you who have not done writing sprints, it's very much like what's called the Pomodoro method, where you set a timer for a specific whatever you want time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And when the timer starts, you have no distractions. You just write until the timer goes off and you get as much done as you can. And then you take a break and then you start again. So if it takes you let's say, so Emmy says it takes all day. So let's say it takes you 3 hours to write 1,000 words. That means your average per hour is about 333 words. And if you really want to be super realistic, it's good to average yourself, kind of estimate yourself down. So if you say it's about 330 words an hour, pull yourself down to 300. And that's going to help you be more realistic and account for days when your writing is a little bit slower than average. I'm just going to use some even numbers because it makes it a little bit easier on my math brain. But let's say, I'm just going to use this little space up here. Let's say you know that every hour you can write about 1,000 or 500 words. So I'm going to write WPH here for words per hour. So say that's about 250 words per 20-minute sprint, and you can get 2 20-minute sprints in an hour with a couple breaks in between. If you know this number, that's like your average word per hour, your average word per sprint, you can do it that way. Or you could say 1,000 words takes you, 3 hours. Either way, you can do it any way you want, whatever's most comfortable for you. But I like to get this words per hour number. Then you can tell yourself, just an estimate. You probably won't know for sure because books tend to have their own life. Let's say you are estimating this novel that you're writing is going to be 50,000 words. And you're going to follow this process with every book, and I'll show you how to do this in just a minute. So let's say it's 50,000 words is the first book you're thinking of writing for 2021. And you write about 50 or 500 words per hour. At that rate, for your draft, you can estimate that your draft will take 100 hours to write. And this is pretty powerful information because you can then take your basic schedule on a weekly basis and say, how many hours per week are you going to write? So if you say, I'll write HPW, which is hours per week, let's say you have about 10 hours per week to write, then you can guess that you're probably going to write about 5,000 words per week. And I know this is kind of mathy, but hopefully you can follow along, and I can kind of go through it again if anybody has questions. But this is the way I like to do it when it comes to drafts. You figure out basically what your hourly writing average is, and then you figure out what your estimate of your total writing words are going to be for this draft. And then you just divide it. And you get 100 hours or 50 hours or 500 hours. And then you figure out how many hours a week you're going to write and do the math there to get how many words per week you're going to write. And that's going to help you a lot when it comes to figuring out your estimate for your drafts. Now, if you are here and you're planning something that is not writing and you can't use words per minute, then you're going to have to come up with a different metric for yourself. So let's say you're trying to put a YouTube channel together. What you would need to do is say, okay, I know I want to put out, a YouTube video every single week. You would need to figure out how many hours it takes you in general to put that video together, and then see if it fits into your schedule to do 1 a week or 2 a week and so on. So you just kind of have to come up with your own metrics. And if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat and we'll collectively try to do a good job of helping you out on that. That, however, is only going to help you with drafting. And this is kind of before we get to the actual schedule, this is kind of the first step that I like to take, is looking at that, kind of getting my hours per week or my hours per day in. And if you don't know about what your schedule is going to look like, then what I recommend doing is just taking a piece of paper or going online and Googling daily planner and finding a daily planner, or you can go back to Google and you can print out from Google a daily plan that has all the hours, and just kind of look in a general day or general week how many hours you think you're going to be able to write. And again, this is another place where you don't need to say, well, I usually only write an hour a week, or an hour a day. But this year I'm going to write 5 hours a day because that's only going to get you back to a place where you're scheduling yourself way too thin. So do the best you can to hold yourself back and think realistically, when do I have time? My husband and I actually just went through and did this for me because I'm trying to work on a better, consistent writing habit. And what I have come out with is that I'm going to write from 9:30 to 11:30 every day. And that's 2 hours of writing for me. And I know personally that I could do 2 hours of about 2,000 words in 2 hours of writing. But I'm not going to give myself 2,000 words a day. I'm going to bring it down to 1,500 words a day, just because I think that's going to be a more realistic thing for me long term. So this is me, says, I'm not on Facebook. Does anyone ever do sprints or groups outside of that platform? So some people are doing writing sprints on Discord as well. I have a group that's for my fan group called Sarra Cannon's Coven. And we do writing sprints there sometimes. A lot of times for Nano, you can find writing sprint groups for your local NaNoWriMo. There's also a West Coast Hardee's group, I think. So yeah, there's some Discord too if you're not on Facebook, which I totally understand. So drafting is just a piece of the process though. So you also have to think about, and I would encourage you to write out a list. And you can do this. There's a notes section in this planner. So if you go kind of to the back of the planner, you've got some notes. So what you could do is you could give yourself a list of all the things you have to do per book. So for me, it's always going to be outlining, drafting, and then editing. And then there's going to be publishing tasks, because I typically don't write. Sometimes I will, there'll be some overlap between outlining and publishing a book, but I don't typically do a lot of writing when I'm doing my marketing and publishing. Now, I did see somebody asked a question earlier about like your daily marketing stuff or your promotions, that kind of stuff. First of all, I have Janet is helping me so much with that. Shout out again to Janet, who is saving my life this year. She is helping out with a lot of that stuff now, but I know not everybody can have an online marketing manager that's going to do that stuff for them. But I kind of separate personally my writing time from my admin time. And in the HB90 planner, again, since we're talking about planning, there is kind of a worksheet for figuring out those admin type tasks and how long it's going to take you. But basically what I do and recommend that you do is like marketing and things like that become sort of administrative tasks if you've got it on a rotation, like your social media, applying for ads and different stuff like that, and going through and counting up how much time you spend on that per week and just scheduling it out in the schedule for your week. But I am counting for this particular writing plan worksheet, just the writing, editing, outline part of it. But if you want to include your marketing in here as well, because you know when you're like ramping up to a big marketing campaign, you're not going to be writing, then totally do that as well. So you have to start thinking about that. Another thing, like have a list of how many things like you want to start planning for. And then you're going to have to just do your best guess. And this is kind of the hard part. I wish I had a better way of saying, you know, this is how you figure it out. But the writing process is different for literally everybody. When some people don't even do outlining, some people have a very rough sketch outline. Other people have 40-page outlines. Some people, they draft and edit at the same time. So by the time they're finished with their first draft, they actually have an edited book. Other people do 0 drafts and then edit the crap out of it 3 times through. So there's really no way for me to tell you outlining is going to take you 10 days. Drafting will take you 30. I can't give you that information. I wish I could, but I cannot. So what you're going to have to do is think back. If you have been actively writing and publishing and following all these things for the past year, then you can definitely go through and say, okay, it takes me on average, 30 days to outline. It takes me about, like we were looking at 100 hours to draft. So that's going to take me, say 60 days. And you can just start to figure those things out. And you can do it book by book, because you may know, let's say you're like me and you're writing multiple series. You may know that this first book you're working on is not going to take you as long as the second book, because the second book I'm going to be writing this next year is going to be book 11 in my Shadow Demon saga. And that book's going to take me longer than The Witch's Door, because I have over 1 million words of history in that book. And it's the next to last book in the series. I'm going to take a drink of my coffee for a second. So what do you do? Oh, this is synchronistic timing. Thank you so much, Aerokite. What if I don't know my process yet? I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't want to overplan. I'm still in the outline phase and I feel like I'm taking forever. This is a tricky part, but I'm so glad you said that, because I was just about to address it. If you don't know your process and you're looking at this like, oh my God, I have no idea how long it's going to take me to outline. The best thing that you can do is give yourself a deadline that you feel, it's kind of like doing a gut check. Give yourself a deadline that you feel is realistic for you based on whatever experience you happen to have. So if you're, for example, stuck in stuck in a situation where you've been outlining this book forever, you probably are going to need some kind of push. So what I would do is, as you start looking at this schedule, you could say, okay, I've been working on this already for 6 months and it hasn't come together. I am going to give myself until February 28th to finish it. And just assign a date for yourself that feels like you can get it accomplished. Try to check in with your gut, your intuition, and say, I know how much more work it needs. And by February 28th, come hell or high water, I'm just going to be drafting at that point. So you're just going to have to give yourself that. But when you get to drafting, if you don't know how many words you write on average in an hour, then you're going to have to just give yourself tons of time this year. And you may not be able to plan out your entire writing year yet. You can plan it, but you might not be able to hit those goals yet. But what you can do, since you know this writing process and this planning process, is as you work through and you learn your process this year, you can make notes so that next year, when we start planning for 2022, you have a much better idea. So this year might be about data collection for you. So you might say, okay, I'm going to give myself till February 28th to finish this. I'm going to give myself until May 31st to finish the first draft, and just give yourself arbitrary dates for the first year, for this year, because you don't know your process yet. But as you go throughout this year, take detailed notes about when you actually finished it. So you could say, and I'm sorry, this is so chicken scratch on this screen. But let's say you actually finished your outlining by January 10th. Then you make a note of that for next year, that it took you how many days to outline this book. The more you keep track of your actual time, the better you're going to get. And this will be an iterative process over time. I have written and published 25 plus novels. So my process is pretty baked until a book gets away from me, and then it just becomes doing the best I can. But basically, this is going to be a process. And there's very few of us sitting here that are planning right now that can actually go, okay, I'm going to finish this by January 12th, this by January 28th, this by such and such. And you're actually going to hit every single one of those deadlines. But this will give you a good overarching realistic idea of what you can do. And if you don't know your process yet, you're going to have to just guess and give yourself as much time as you think and set deadlines. And then as you either hit them or hear them pass by, make notes so that you can better estimate for next time. So once you have a list of all the things you need to get done for the year, we're going to come back to this page. What I have next in this planner for you is where you're going to actually start planning out your writing schedule for the year. So project number 1 for everybody here is going to be the project you're currently working on. Don't put yourself in a situation like me where you say, well, we've got 2 weeks left of the year. I'm going to finish this project before it starts, or 3 weeks, or whatever we have. The first project you write down should be the book that you're currently working on. For me, it's still Fate's Surrender. I do hope that I will have it finished, but I am just going to give myself that buffer of saying that is the first one, even if I'm only going to spend 10 days on it, because I'm actually going to be publishing this book on January 14th. So that's going to be the first book that I give myself. So the project number 1 is the book you are currently working on. And I saw some comments. Yes, if you are traditionally published, you're going to have a slightly different type of look at your schedule. Sometimes that is a blessing because you have some outer accountability expecting you to hit these certain dates. And, sometimes if you're traditionally published, you're also going to have some things in the air, like, I don't know when I'm getting my edits back. And that is just a kind of a part of the process, and nobody can tell you exactly how you do it. You just have to say, well, as soon as I get these edits back, I'll have to shift my other project so that I can finish these edits. And you come up with a way that works for you to work through it. Okay, so for your first project, what stage are you in? So over here on this left side, I have a list of the stages that I use. So plotting or outlining, rough draft, edits, and publishing. Those are the ones I outlined it on the page before. If these don't work for you, and I saw somebody mention like I need a research stage, feel free to alter this, white some stuff out, change the different, because maybe you don't plot, maybe you do a lot of research and then you jump straight into your rough draft. But basically what you're going to need to do here is figure out how much time you're going to give yourself for each stage of this process for your first project. Basically for me, Fate's Surrender is already plotted, so I don't have to do that. I've actually finished the rough draft. So for this first project, I'm still in edits. So let's say I'm going to give myself 10 days for these edits because I know kind of what the work, since this is a book I've been working on for years, I know I'm going to give myself these 10 days. For the publishing stuff, I'm going to give myself 5 days. And I'm going to say 15 days to complete. Now, where am I getting these numbers? This is where it comes back into what I was talking about before, is you just have to work off of your previous experience of what you've done before and, continue to do the best you can to estimate. If you don't know yet, because you've never finished a book, how long edits are going to take you, what I recommend is giving yourself the same amount of time for edits that it took you to write the book. That may be way too much time for you, or you may end up needing more. But the only way that we can figure out what to do or how to get better at this planning process is to set a goal, track your data, see how long it actually took you, and then better estimate in the future. And there is no shortcut to that. You have to look at your own data instead of just saying, well, I don't know, like I did for the first several years. I was just like, I have no idea how long it takes me to write a book. You have to kind of look at that data and just trust that it's going to come together. I think I saw a question. Is it unrealistic to say to edit a chapter a day for a 21 chapter book? So I think it can be totally realistic depending on your process and who you are. I tend to like, how long are your chapters? How long will it take you? What you might want to do is, if you are not sure and you're working on edits and you're about to come to edits, then what you might want to do is hold off on actually creating your yearly plan until you get to the edits. And then once you edit a chapter, see if you can do a chapter a day. And that's going to give you the data that you need to say, oh, actually, I need 2 days to edit every chapter. Then you can move forward with your plan, accounting for 2 days per chapter. Or you might get through and be like, most chapters, I can do 2 chapters in a day. But it's really going to depend on so many things, like how many words is your chapters. I write short chapters, but I know I have a friend who writes every chapter is almost exactly 4,000 words. So are your chapters pretty even? And so on. So it's just going to be you. It's like I can guide you through, but in the end, this type of estimating work is on you, which I know some of you are like, no, I'm freaking out. But yes, sadly, that's just the truth. This part of it is your responsibility. You can kind of guess some guidelines. So this is what I'm saying, like for guidelines, if you can spend some time, if you don't know how much words you write per hour, you could spend some time figuring out that word per hour count between now and the beginning of the year. Run some sprints, try some things, or if you don't write sprints, just check your average word per hour and that kind of thing. And then that gives you your draft time, at least a good estimate. Then when you get to edits, if you've never edited before, like I said, if you gave yourself 60 days for writing, give yourself 60 days for editing. Publishing, you may or may not actually be publishing. You might not be publishing for years. So you may not need that. You might just cross that out because I'm not to that point yet. I just want to go ahead and write the next book in the series or whatever. Or some of you might be publishing it on Wattpad or just sending it to critique partners and doing a back and forth. So you might need a self-edit section, and then here might be critique section. You're going to be working with your critique partners, but you're not actually ready to publish because maybe you're going to submit it to agents, and that is never like a super fast process. Well, I shouldn't say never, but rarely a super fast process. So it's really going to be up to you what you want to do. Then what you do is once you figure this out, you would say, okay, the project, I'm going to start it on January. I'm going to say January 2nd because I'm not probably going to be writing on January 1st. I'm going to be reading The Witch's Door, though, over on my Sarra Cannon channel, if you want to join me. Renee asked what I was drinking. I'm drinking caramel macchiato, which is so delicious. Then project completed by. This is where you're going to kind of go back and forth between the calendar, and why it can be helpful to actually have it printed so you can have both sitting here with you. But I would go, okay, like if I was really marking this stuff off earlier, I would have marked off January 1st as a non-writing day. But if I'm going to say start this book on January 2nd, this is where you can have a lot of fun with color coding and all kinds of stickers and washi. Now, this does not look super pretty right now, but I will clean it up when I do it on paper. But I would, let's say I have 3 little highlighters here. One is pink, one is green, and one is purple. So what I tend to do is over here in this little section where it says January, I will put a little dot, could be a sticker or anything like that. And I will assign that to a book. So let's say purple is Fate's Surrender. And then what I like to do, and I will use skinny washi tape for this, but you can also use highlighters, is I will say, remember I said I was going to give myself 15 days. So I give myself this 10 days, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's writing. So I'm actually, this is just kind of my process as I write this little up and down here to let myself know that this was the end of my writing. And I write on top of this color that this is my draft time. Then I'm going to use that same color because that's my color for this book. And I'm going to estimate my 5 days of other work. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can't count that day, right? Because it was a non-writing day. So I have to go back and I'll say, this is not my actual schedule, by the way, but it's just an example. So if you hit, as you're counting those days, 10 days, 5 days, you hit something like I just did, where you've got a day that's not a writing day, it's not a working day, then you need to bring it out and make your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th day the next available day. Then I would give myself another kind of hard stop here and then mark that this is for publishing. And actually, that wasn't supposed to be draft. That was supposed to be edits. You guys tracking me? Is this making sense? So this is what I like to do, y'all. I make it a lot prettier than this. And I will confess that a lot of times what I do is I actually make one rough scratch version of it. And then I go back and make it prettier just because I'm crazy. But I know we have a lot of people who are crazy like me. So if you are not planning a writing project, you can do this with anything that you're working on. So it could be a YouTube setup. You could have multiple things. But I did see somebody ask, what is different about this than my HB90 system? This is actually very similar to my HB90 system and my HB90 course. We will be going through a lot of this type of process, but part of what's different is once we get through the time estimator in my HB90 course, then we go through this really powerful process of setting 3 goals just for this quarter. And I show you very detailed, more so than I do here on the channel, of how to break those goals down into projects and tasks. So it's a similar, it's the same process I've talked about here on my YouTube channel, but it's like getting personal attention from me and definitely going a lot deeper into all of these topics. You get a lot more information and a lot more, a lot more detailed in how you do it and a lot more personal support. Plus you get a community of people, many of which I see here today, who every single day can come into the group and post. Every single week you get an accountability post and you get to take the course with us over and over again. Hildy just made me laugh, and now I'm like, what? It is 4 p.m. my time for anyone who was curious. Hildy said, I'm crazy like you. Sometimes I print 3 copies. I know. What is it? It's just like we want it to look really nice. So just to follow through this process. So let's say The next book, and this is another thing to keep in mind as you start to plan. The next book that I'm going to be working on is The Witch's Door. And like I said, this is not really my schedule because this will all be happening a little bit sooner than this. But you write out your project time for when it's done and when it's completed. So let's see, what day did I end that on? Let's say it was January 17th. Oops, I'm getting there. So you write out that schedule here. Still wrote 15th. It's hard to be live and think straight. So the second project that I have here is The Witch's Door. So for hopefully a lot of you may be working on a book right now. It might be your first book. Maybe if you have standalones, then you've got another idea for a project. If you don't know the name of the book or you're not exactly sure which project it's going to be, go ahead and just call it Book 2 or 2021 Project 2. And that's fine too. You can name it later. You can figure out what it is later. But the best thing you can do for yourself is kind of have an idea of what that book is going to be. Is it the next book in your series? Is it another horror novel? Are you going to try writing romance for the first time? What would you like to do? Because what you're going to be writing is going to clue you in as to how much time you need. So The Witch's Door, technically, according to my schedule, could start on the 18th, right? Because I have this day free. However, I will say that I also know from my own personal experience that I cannot finish a book and then immediately the next day start working on another book. I really can't. So I typically will tend to take a few days off. Eastrick said, are you only working on one project at a time? So kind of. I typically only work on one project seriously at a time. I'm only ever writing one project at a time most of the time, but I am often plotting things kind of as I go. So I have a notebook that's sort of running notes. So sometimes my husband and I will take a walk and we'll be talking through book 11 in my series. And I'll say, oh, I'm going to do this. And oh, what if Harper does this? And so I'll have a lot of those plotting notes already done. But in terms of actively writing, editing, publishing a book, I'm usually just doing one at a time. And that may not be true for you. So if, let's say, the way you work is that while you're editing one novel, you're already plotting the next, then all you have to do is give that next book a color. So let's say my Witch's Door is going to be this green color. Write it in the box for the month that you are planning to start it. And then you can just overlap. So you will see people do this on calendars. I've seen this before too. So let's say you're going to actually start that book on January 4th. Oops, wrong one. You can just put both colors here. And you're just working on two projects at once. This is just the thing that if you are going to do this, make sure this is actually how you work and not just how you wish you could work, not just how you've always wanted to do and you don't actually do. If you have the goal to someday be like this, but this is not how you are right now, then set it up in your goals to establish a habit of working on multiple projects at a time and take it really slow. So don't expect yourself as of January 1st to just magically put on a superhero cape and be the person you always wanted to be, because that is just setting yourself up for disappointment. It's so much better, in my opinion, to say, okay, over the course of Q1 next year, I'm going to work on a goal of getting better and getting more experienced at working on two projects at once. But I'm going to give myself like twice as much time for plotting so that I can work on both of those projects at once. So how you fill out this sheet with the projects is going to partially depend on what you do, whether you're working on two projects at once. So like I said, if you want to actually be editing for 10 days, project 1, while you're plotting for, let's say 20 days, project 2, then you can have that overlap. Like I said, if that's the way you usually do it, go ahead and have that overlap and go over here and say, okay, I'm going to start this on January 4th and I'm going to give myself 20 days. And you would just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, skip the day you're not working, excuse me. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, skip the day you're not working, and 20. So give yourself those days, and it kind of, you can overlap some of those things. Some days they'll be overlap, some days they'll not, but you go through and you make those counts, right? Then you go back so that gives us to the 25th. And I'm going to do like I always do, which is give myself this little kind of up down mark so that I know that that's where I'm going to be. And I will say, wait, let me see that date again, 25th. I will say this project in terms of my plotting is going to end on the 25th. And if you want to, you can say over here, I gave you enough space to put this in the notes, or you could put it over here to say I'm starting it on January 4th and I'm going to end it on January 25th. Then the next thing you could say is, okay, now, so on the 25th or whatever my next available day is, I have to start the rough draft. So instead of starting with your calendar and saying the rough draft has to be done by X days, start really thinking realistically about how long is it going to take me to finish my rough draft. If you want to finish your rough draft and it usually takes you, 100 hours, how many days is it going to take you to have 100 hours of writing time? If you get, say, 20 hours a week, then it's going to take you 5 weeks to write, or you could do it by week or not. Kind of depends on how many days off you have. But let's say you're going to do it by weeks, and you're going to say, I'm going to give myself 5 weeks starting on the 26th. So you would take that same color for the witch's door and you would say, this is week number 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and week 5. There you're giving yourself all of this, and you would mark it on here that this is for my drafting for witch's door. That basically is going to take you all the way to February 25th. So what you would do is you would come up here and you could either give yourself the number of days, or you could say 5 weeks. Like I said, this is super flexible, just whatever you do to try to be consistent with it. So that's going to start on January 26th and it's going to finish on February 25th. And by then, hopefully you have your book drafted. Then you move on to the next stage of the process. So let's say I'm not as experienced at editing as I want to be. So I'm going to give myself another 5 weeks for editing. So I'm going to come over here to my calendar and I'm going to look at my edits. So I've got, this is the end of my drafting, and I mark that with a little hash mark or whatever so that I know that's the end. And then I'm going to kind of look at my schedule here and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to give myself this day off so that I kind of have these weeks marked off. So I've got a vacation coming up, and then I need 5 weeks to draft this book. So I'm going to start at my next available time. And this is where the calendar comes in handy, because let's say you were drafting and because of the number of days you gave yourself, it looked like you were going to be done drafting on the 24th. And now you need to start editing, but all you've got is this one lonely little day left to edit, and then you're going on vacation for 2 weeks. You're probably not going to get much done in that one day of editing. You can still go ahead and say that you're going to edit, but when I plan this way, I just say, okay, well, that day is going to be just kind of like a buffer day. It gives me an extra day to finish my draft, and we'll just call it even, because I know I'm probably not going to do one day of the edits and then take 2 weeks off. So when you actually schedule it out, this is where some of those little things will start to come in and get clear. So now I'm going to come down here to the 14th, and I'm going to start this on the 14th and give myself another 5 weeks. 1, 2, 3. And now I got to go to the next page. That's kind of still the 3rd week for 5 weeks. So if you had any other days in there that didn't work, that gives you kind of some buffer or whatever. Or if it turns out that one of these weeks was a vacation week, you would have to give it that time. And then I just mark on here that this is edits, or you could have a really cool sticker or something that you use, and give myself the little hash to know that this is the end. So this would be to April 17th. So March 14th to April 17th. So you come back up here and you say, my edits are from, you iPad. March 14th to April. I can't hold it in my head long enough. Too much pressure. 17th. This is basically how you go through the entire process. When you get to publishing, and like I said, if you always know that when you're in edits, you are plotting the next book because that's the way you work, then you would kind of overlap those projects. So maybe by the time you get over here to this area where you're editing for these last 2 weeks, you're going to go ahead and add in your third project. And I like to, put that color where it first appears. And you're going to say, okay, so this is going to be Vengeful Darkness. This is my project number 3. And you can overlap and be already plotting that one for these 2 weeks. It's 100% up to you whether you want to overlap those or not. But just my biggest advice to you is don't overlap an extra plan if that's not how you normally work, or if you aren't yet sure what your process is. If you haven't been doing this already, don't try to bust your butt to do it now. Gradually work yourself up to it, because what you want to do with this plan is build yourself positive momentum so that you have as much forward motion and excitement, and the things that you're saying about yourself in your head are all really good things, like, wow, look at me, I actually hit my deadline. This is amazing. I'm really killing it. What you don't want to do is end up back in January and going, well, I totally screwed that and my life sucks. Make it as achievable as possible. There's a fine line between pushing yourself to do your best and expecting way too much of yourself to where you end up holding yourself back because you never have positive momentum. But that is basically what you need to do, is go through your entire schedule. Make sure you've got days marked off. And like I said, if what may end up happening is you don't know. Remember how I said that I had 3 days a month that I need to take off for chronic illness? I am always pretty much just going to mark those days off on the first 3 days of every month. So if I had really been filling this out, I usually would fill it out and mark off those first 3 days of the month. However, when you get to actually planning for that month, you don't know when you're going to have the days when you're not feeling well, because they come out of the blue. So you may end up, thinking that you weren't going to finish this book until this day, but then you ended up not needing these extra days off. And so you finished a little bit early. But how exciting would that be to finish early instead of behind? But use those days that are marked off and don't count them as working days. That's the way I would like for you to do it. Okay, a couple of things that I want to mention before we go. And I know we've gone over an hour, but hey, you guys are still here. And this is hopefully very useful, I hope. What if your plan is uncertain because you are laid off currently, or you lost your job, or you're not sure if you're going back to university and COVID has kind of messed up your schedule? A couple of tips. You have kind of several ways to plan. One, you can plan as if everything is going to stay exactly the same way it is now. Even though you might have to go back to school or you might have to go back to work, you could go ahead and plan as it is now. And if your circumstances change, replan. That's one possibility. You could also plan for whichever schedule gives you as little time as possible. So if you think you might be going back to university, but you're not sure, plan as if you are, because that'll take a lot of extra time. So just go ahead and plan as if you are. And the worst thing that happens is you get ahead and you have more time than you thought. The third option is to create two plans. Create one plan as if everything stays the same. One plan as if you're going back to work that becomes kind of like a contingency plan. And you follow the first plan for as long as you can. And then if you go back to work, you switch over to that contingency plan. You can do it any of those three ways, but I think that that is probably the best way to do it when your schedule is potentially up in the air. And I saw a question, is my HB90 planner or my goal planner up on Etsy? So the HB90 planner comes free with the quarterly planner comes free with the course, which the course actually closes for enrollment in just like 7 or 8 hours. So if you want to join, there is a link down below. We start tomorrow, which is so exciting. But Q1 is up on Etsy, and it's actually 30% off until tomorrow night. So if you want to go grab it, there's a link in the description below, or you can just go to etsy.com/shop/heartbreathings. The goals planner, I kind of mentioned this. I wanted to have it out obviously by the first of the month, but I was trying to take some stuff off my plate and outsource it. And the designer that I outsourced it to just has been kind of a mess with the timeline, to be honest. And I saw right before I went live here that he just sent me the final files. I had them all proofread overnight by some of our HB90 alumni, and we caught all the little errors, hopefully, and it's going to be live tonight. So I will work on it this afternoon. I've just got to spend a little bit of time with the kids, but it will be going live tonight or tomorrow. And that will also be 30% off for the first week. So if you're interested, the difference for anybody interested in that, the difference between the Q1 planner and the goals planner, I'll cover this in a video coming up, is the Q1 planner is the 90-day planner with a daily planner. So you've got the 50 goal setting pages, and you have a daily, weekly, and monthly actual, like, use it every day planner. The goals planner has the whole year of goal setting pages, but it doesn't have a daily planner. So that's for people, it's like you already have your, your daily planner that you like, your plum paper planner or your panda planner or your passion planner or whatever, but you want the goal setting pages and you don't need a planner, you just need the workbook. So both of them are good. And it does come with the monthly spreads. It comes with a checklist for your tasks. And I did, out of some requests, add a weekly review. It has a monthly review, quarterly review, yearly review. So it has all that stuff. And some people actually use both. I do. I use the daily planner, but I also use the goals planner so that all my goals and workbook stuff is kept to that one planner. So I would love to have you guys pick up that planner. If you don't know if you're ready for the whole course, the planner is a good place to start. But you can actually, even if you're not ready for the planner or you're not into planners, you can use this system that I've taken you through here. And if you go to my Kanban board playlist here on YouTube, you can get a ton of information from that too. But you do get a good community out of the course, which is kind of priceless, to be honest. So those are basically my biggest tips. I know that the biggest struggle is the estimating. It is tough. So what I really encourage you to do with the estimating is do your best guesses based on your experience and then track your time. I am going to be doing a video here on YouTube before the end of the year of how I'm going to be tracking my writing projects in a program or a website called Notion. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of it. It's basically an amazing, I don't even know how to explain it. It's a website, it's an app, it's all of this stuff. And Janet and I started using it together when we started working together. And I have been creating a writing tracker inside that. And I'm going to be using that at the beginning of the year to track all my writing sprints, all these stages, so that when I get to planning for 2022, I'm going to be able to look and say, on average, it takes me exactly 30 days to edit my books. On average, it takes me XYZ. Because that is going to be, I think, priceless for me to have that data. So I will show you guys how to do that. So if you have stumbled upon this live and you are not part of our Heart Breathings community, I would absolutely love for you to hit the subscribe button and join us here on this channel. It's really, a lot of us are writers, but you can really get a lot out of this channel and the productivity tips and encouragement, even if you are not a writer. So come join us for sure. But Aerokite says, I love Notion. I do too. I never had used it before, but I am so excited to share it with you. And yes, I will be doing a video on Notion and how I am going to be doing my wikis now. I've talked about how I do wikis for my series Bibles. I'm moving them from PB Works over to doing them in Notion, as well as my entire writing sort of tracking is all going into Notion, and I will do a big video. I'm hoping I can get it up by the end of the year, but it might be like early January kind of thing, but it is coming soon for sure. Okay, let's see. Any other things that I missed? I do say, this is kind of like in closing, it's easy to feel frustrated if you want to do more than what your schedule is allowing for you. But like I said, you can't just magically make more time in the world. You have what you have. What you can do is you can take away as many obstacles to not being as productive with that time. So if you have 100 days to work on your writing next year, make those 100 days the most bomb, amazing 100 days of the year. And you can get more done in those 100 days than somebody else could do in 5 years, because you're focused, you're motivated, you're excited, and you're aware of exactly how much time and what you're going to do with it. This day I'm going to be editing, and it gets very, very good in terms of your focus, your ability to perform. The other hidden thing here that I've talked about a few times on the live stream here is it's not just about productivity and focus. It's also about your mindset. And so much of your productivity is tied to your energy and your mental health. If you are not taking care of your mental health and you're trying to push yourself too hard, you're constantly saying bad things about yourself because you're always behind, you're always disappointed, you will have less energy and less focus on the things that matter. So follow this system, believe in yourself, come here anytime you need some encouragement, because I'm always happy to dish it out, and make the most of creating positive forward momentum in your life. And it's going to be amazing. So somebody asked, how much is the course that starts tomorrow? So the course that starts tomorrow is a 7-day course. It is $199, or it's a 3-month payment plan of $75 a month. And it is not just 7 days. You get that course lifetime access, and you can take it again. So we have a lot of alumni on the call here today, and it is priceless to be able to go through it over and over. And in fact, it gets better and better the more you do it, because you get to know that data. Your estimates get better. The way you create the system to be your own, and the more you make it flexible for yourself and tailor it to yourself, gets better and better every single time. So Holly says, is the course on Facebook? The course is on Teachable, which is just a regular website, but we do have a kickoff call tomorrow and a community on Facebook. So if you're not on Facebook, you can actually watch the live call either on replay, or you can watch it here on a private unlisted link here on YouTube. So you don't have to be on Facebook, but if you're not on Facebook, you will miss out on the community aspects of it with the weekly accountability, because I only do that on Facebook. But the course itself is all on Teachable through videos. And so it's a 7-day course, but you can self-pace yourself. Is that what you call it? Self-paced course. And yes, it used to be a 3-day course, and I expanded it to a 7-day course. And I think it has gotten so much better as a 7-day course than it even was as a 3-day course. And every single time I redo it, or every single quarter, I try to make it a little bit better. And yes, once you take it again every single quarter. The only thing it doesn't come with every quarter is a new planner. So you get the Q1 planner for 2021 if you sign up today. But next quarter, you'll either need to buy the planner, or you can get the undated planner, which you can just reprint every single quarter, or you can use your planner that you got for free and just change the dates, or use the system, like the goal setting pages, just reprint them, and it'll still work and it'll still be the same. So Robin said, can it be bought for someone else? Yeah, absolutely. If you want to gift it to someone else, you can just email me at sarah@heartbreathings.com, and we can run the payment and we can sign them up through email for them. So we can make it work for sure. And I totally understand if now is not the right time. I am not doing this live stream to try to sell you a course. I'm doing this because it genuinely matters to me that we, as a community, continue to take care of our mental health. And one of the best things for me once I hit rock bottom was understanding and having this sort of epiphany that my productivity and my creativity is so closely interlinked to whether I am taking care of my mental health. And it's something I feel like in not only the writing community, but the entrepreneur community, and really just the community at large of our world right now, is that we put a lot of emphasis on hustle and harder and make more money and do more and compare yourself to everyone else and you never live up to it. And what we should be spending more time is encouraging each other, being there for each other, and building a community that matters and taking care of our mental health. And this type of planning process for me has made huge difference in my mental health, because instead of planning based on fear and instead of planning based on, I'm going to shove these 5 novels into my schedule, whether I have the time or not, and then being disappointed, I'm actually planning realistically and I feel in control instead of feeling like I'm in chaos at all times. So take care of your mental health, plan a year for 2021 that is going to be awesome. If you would like, come join us in the HB90 Bootcamp. I do run it every single quarter. So if now is not the right time for you, that's okay. It will be here when you need it. So next time it will run in March. I also have a course that I've seen a few people mention that is the Publish and Thrive course. This is for anyone looking to self-publish or to increase your sales. It is not a marketing course. It is literally like how, just like we talked about today, how to publish with a good mindset. And I walk you through the business plan and how to write blurbs and how to upload your books and start your business and track your sales and all of that stuff. That is a 5-week course. It is much more intensive, but that will run again in February. When you sign up for HB90, you will get a $99 coupon to join Publish and Thrive. So they kind of work together for anybody looking forward to it. So, oh, Eunice, you are so sweet. So she says, Sarah is not just my writing coach. I think of her as my life coach. Wish I had Publish and Thrive years ago. I know that I wish I had Publish and Thrive. I really did try to put everything I could into that course. And there's a lot of really good updates coming for this next February one to make it even better. So definitely come join us. Marsha says, so glad to hear you say this. I'm here to get up after hitting my rock bottom and I don't write. I have 100% been there. And part of the reason that I joined Heart Breathings and why I call it Heart Breathings instead of, make more money or anything like that is because it comes from the quote, fill your paper with the breathings of your heart, which I have actually tattooed on my body because it is that important to me. That really, whether you're here because you're a writer or you're creative in some way, or you're just a human being who wants to make your dreams come true, the best thing you can do is follow your heart. And I really, really believe that. So I hope that you will join us for this course. But if it's not the right time, I'm so grateful that you were here for this. I hope that this helped you in planning your goals and your writing schedule for next year. Come join us in the Writing Sprints group. The link is down below. And that's all I have for you guys. So somebody asked, how much is Publish and Thrive? Publish and Thrive is $399. So one of the more reasonably priced self-publishing courses on the market, and it is well worth the money. I'm not just saying that because I created it, but because I specifically kept the price low to make sure that it's affordable for those of you getting started. And it is good for people who have a few books out. If you've followed Bethany Adazada here on YouTube, she had several books out already and she took the course, and you can go to her channel and search for Publish and Thrive. And she's talked about how it made a difference in her career. If you have, a dozen books out and you're really looking to just increase your marketing skills, this is not the best course for you, but you might want to look into somebody like Mark Dawson, who talks more about marketing and publishing ads and stuff like that, or definitely follow David Gaughran's website. They are much better gurus on increasing sales when you already have a good backlist, but this is a great place to start. And there is a 6-month payment plan for that. And I will be doing a bundle for both courses in January. So it's very fun. And it is, yes, it is good for nonfiction writers, but it is more geared toward fiction, but it's so much that's just general advice about how to start your business, how to market your books. And I do give examples sorry, I was trying to read a comment and lost my train of thought. Examples for nonfiction writing as well. But it's not specifically tailored toward nonfiction, but it will work for you as well. All right, you guys, that is it. I hope you enjoyed it. I went way longer than I expected, but oh my gosh, I told George, I said, yeah, we'll probably have 100 people here. And there were like 600 people for the majority of the time. And I am just going to go to bed tonight like, Oh, on cloud nine. I'm so excited that you guys were here, and I sincerely hope this helped you. And I'm glad that you guys liked my little iPad thing. It took me some time to get this going, but I am so excited. Oh, Karen is here. She took the course and she writes nonfiction, and she agrees that it is helpful. I love you guys. I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you so much. Let me know how your writing is going. Check in with me on social media and here on the YouTube channel. And I am wishing you the best as you plan your 2021 writing schedule. And I will see you soon. I'll be back soon with December notebook challenge will be coming up soon. I just have to record it. So thank you all for being here. And the goals planner will hopefully be up tonight or tomorrow over on Etsy. All right. Good night, you guys. Thank you so much.